Welcome, everyone. Before we begin, I would first like to assist those to set up our language services. So if you're joining us and would like to utilize the Portuguese translation, please click the globe icon down below, labeled interpretation, at the bottom of the screen, and the pop-up message will say English and Portuguese interpretation is available. When you click Portuguese, you should now be able to hear our Portuguese speaking interpreter, Dora, at 80% volume, and you will hear us at 20% volume as panelists. To enable closed captioning, please click the CC icon labeled live transcript at the bottom of your screen. Click show subtitles, and it would now appear, and you can move that around however you see fit. Welcome to Women Making History. This is a special program brought to us by the NAACP Martha's Vineyard branch, the African American Heritage Trail of Martha's Vineyard, and the Communication Ambassador Partnership of Martha's Vineyard. For those that do not know, CAP is an equitable language access opportunity that has brought forth our wonderful interpretation here today, as well as closed captioning. Thank you, Janelle, and the wonderful women making history with us today are Miss Carrie Tankard and Dr. Elaine Weintraub. Our Portuguese interpreters today are Dora and Sasha. The event's recording and reading resources mentioned will be made available later, as well as in the chat. There'll be some time towards the end of this program to answer any questions from our attendees. We welcome you to please click the speech bubble icon at the bottom of the screen that's labeled Q&A. And feel free to type any questions you have, and we will try to answer them as best as we can. If you have a particular question that you'd like answered by a particular panelist, please put their name in parentheses at the beginning of that question, and we will direct it to them. If you'd like to submit a question anonymously, you may do so by clicking the box that says send anonymously before submitting. As many of us are watching from Martha's Vineyard, I would like to take a moment to remind everyone how important it is that we acknowledge the Indigenous people as traditional stewards of this land and an enduring relationship that exists between them and their traditional tutors. The land in which we sit here is the traditional unceded territory of the Wampanoag Nation, and we acknowledge that painful history of genocide and forced occupation of their territory, and honor and respect the diverse Indigenous people connected to the land on which we gather here. This program today is a celebration of Black history and women's history. Every single day, women break barriers and shatter glass ceilings, making history. We wanted to celebrate that with these two wonderful women who have created an opportunity here on this island for this community to understand and learn about the true history of people of color on Martha's Vineyard, a history that's often covered up or partially told. In the words of the late, great Dr. Maya Angelou, the more you know of your history, the more liberated you are. First, I'd like to welcome and honor Miss Carrie Tankard. She is an activist, a community member, a longtime first vice president of the NAACP, Martha's Vineyard branch. Her greatest accomplishment is being a mother of 6, a grandmother of 7, and a great-grandmother of 4. I'd also like to welcome Dr. Elaine Weintraub. She is an educator, a historian, and a writer. She has been widely published and has worked extensively for social justice through education and advocacy. She works collaboratively with several organizations to provide opportunities for young people. And her greatest accomplishment and ambition that she feels she's accomplished and contributed in whatever small way that she can to just create a more better and inclusive world for us all. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us, ladies. Together, these two amazing women have created their shared passion and justice for more inclusive history to create and found the African American Heritage Trail of Martha's Vineyard. That's been going strong for approximately 30 years now. Is that right?
Right.
You are an inspiration to us all. And I would just like to first, ask how this came to be. How did this vision start of creating this trail? Because I'm sure you did not foresee there being over 31 sites here today.
Well, for me, through the NAACP, I would go around every February taking posters and some sort of exhibits and things to different schools, libraries, and we even had exhibits on the corner store in Oak Bluffs. A mutual friend that was a school teacher also with Elaine, and a friend of mine said we should get together. The funny part of it is, I don't remember if Elaine called me or I called her, but I was thrown aback. I heard this accent with the last name Weintraub, and I couldn't figure it out. But in today's ways, I'm wondering if that was unconscious bias, because I couldn't figure it out. But anyway, it was wonderful getting to know her. We finally met up in person and it was grand. How about you, Elaine?
Well, for me, I was teaching in the Oak Bluffs school, and I had a class, the only time in my teaching career that I've taught young children. They were first grade, and they were all in the same class, 14 little boys, all of color. And so I thought, I know what to do about this. I'm trained in cultural uh, bias and inclusive history, and I know what to do. I'll go off and buy some books about the Black history of Martha's Vineyard, because I was new to Martha's Vineyard, but I knew that there was a history. I mean, I know history, so I knew that there had to be, as long as there'd been a European history on Martha's Vineyard, there had to be an African American history. There weren't any books, none. And I went to the museum, I went to bookstores. In those days, bookstores had millions of books. I could have got books about cats of Martha's Vineyard, ghosts of Martha's Vineyard, trees of Martha's Vineyard, all sorts of founding father stuff, but nothing. And so, having realized there was nothing there, I realized that you have to go find it. And I think that's a really important thing for us all to realize that it's always there. We just have to find it. And Carrie, it was you who called me. And both of us are quite sort of, I would say we tend to be shy. We're not people who run around calling people we don't know. But we knew about each other. Because every time I tried to do anything, people would say, you should talk to Carrie Tankard because she'd be interested in that. So we said we got together, and originally we thought if we could have 4 sites, we'll put the plaques on them. We had no money, so it was we had lots of good ideas, but no money. And I remember thinking, well, if we're going to have those 4 sites, people will learn some of this history whether they want to or not. It's not just have to walk past it. Well, as you say, we have 31, shortly to have 33. So something worked right.
Certainly did. It's good for that first call. I mean, it's amazing what it's blossomed into. And this isn't just about sites and markers and tours. I mean, it's so much more than that. It seems about remembering the past and honoring families and celebrating firsts and honoring those present and empowering those generations, right?
I think too that the tour program we do, which is how we mostly finance the 31, soon to be 33 sites, there's a great sense of, I do a lot of the tours. We hire people to do them, but we still end up having to do so. Is that you realize you're giving a gift to people who have been deprived of that history. And that is a very moving and emotionally valuable experience. It's been very powerful.
The other thing is the community has always been behind us. We could always count on them. Actually, they're some of the ones that fed us a lot of the information that we could go seek out things.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, you have 31, soon to be much more markers on this all across the island, not just in one town. It's remarkable.
In every town now.
Every town now. Oh, that's even better. And so,
yes,
as that process comes to be, what is it like when you are trying to create a new marker, or do people approach you with asking if they can add the site, or is there a process that you have to go through?
Do you want to speak to that, Carrie?
Well, for some of them, they approached us and we wanted them to tell us their story. And through research and their story, we accepted them or not. Most of the time we did, because they were very, true. And then we would arrange with them if they would like a plaque on their property or wherever. And we figure out how to finance it. Sometimes it wasn't easy. Some of the homeowners helped us with that.
We have put criteria on our website, not that anybody looks at it, because everybody loves their own story, as they should, because that's really the basis of everything we're doing. We're saying, hey, look, everybody has a story. Everybody's story matters. And so we say, oh, well, does it fit the criteria? We kind of have to have the criteria unless we get a huge donation of money from somewhere. Because it would be nice to put a plaque on everybody who would like one, provided that that was a genuine story. But I think honoring the stories is what it's all about.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
The stories deserve to be told. Especially after so long they haven't been. I think it's just so important that we continue to empower and educate those, see where we've been and how we can move forward with our career. And in this process, we've done a lot of research, I'm sure, of each and every site. Were there any challenges that you kind of came across or surprises that you found?
I think there are challenges always, often to yourself. And one thing that is really important about the job that we do here is that we leave the ego at the door and the gossip at the other door. And we keep our eyes on the prize, which is to build this trail, educate future generations, and make sure this history doesn't get lost again. So I would say the challenge sometimes is to try and listen to everybody. And listening is the greatest skill. I mean, when we take tours, you listen as well as talk. You listen, you hear what people say, and you learn. For instance, I'll give an example of that. The site we have for Emma Maitland, the world lightweight female boxing champion, we knew a lot of her story. She had always planned to write a book about her life, and she'd made a lot of notes, gave those to her nephew, gave them to me. So we knew a lot. But one thing we didn't know, we always speculated about, Emma Maitland traced her life trajectory from when she was 11, and a Catholic priest used to visit her after she'd had a bad accident, couldn't walk for a year, and told her that she should get educated and that education was the way out of the injustice that she was living in. And she was living in the height of the Jim Crow era in Virginia, post collapse of Reconstruction. And we always wondered, why a Catholic priest? Because the family aren't Catholic. So what was a Catholic priest wandering into the house visiting with her? And then taking a tour, telling them this story and saying to them, I don't know why the Catholic priest went there. And this young woman on the tour said, oh, I can help you with that. She said, I know that area. That's whole tobacco growing area in Maryland and North Virginia. And she said that was all the Jesuit order. They were slaveholders at one point, and that Georgetown University now does free, no tuition for students who come from families where enslavement was in their past. But she gave me a whole piece of the puzzle. And that's what it's about: giving, listening, and I guess caring.
Yes. Well, I worked in a dental office, and a patient came in one day and handed me a document. And it was one of the documents that Elaine really needed to put that stamp on it and say, yes, that happened.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was a census document.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was in the case of Captain William Martin,
right,
the only African-American whaling captain whose life we researched back in the 1990s. And this gentleman had given Carrie the census, and there we could figure out it was a story, really a report to the governor about the condition, to quote the exact title, the condition of the Indians on Chappaquiddick in Christiantown. And it gave all sorts of documentary research information.
And with that, it's not just him, he has generations that have made history and that have plaques. Is that right, Rebecca? Africa?
Yeah. Yeah, the site for Rebecca, the woman from Africa in Chilmark, she is William Martin's, and there it is in the left-hand corner. And we didn't have very much money. In fact, we didn't have any at the beginning of the building the trail. And so Rebecca's plaque is small. There was so much we could say, but you pay by the letter. So we said the woman from Africa enslaved in Chilmark, because that was the basic story. She was the great grandmother of William Martin. So in one family, it was an arc from enslavement through to being the island's only African-American whaling captain. And you'll see from that picture that there's hundreds of rocks and heart-shaped things, and people leave them. That's not something we initiated. That's people visiting. They're probably visiting the beach at Great Bight Reserve. They walk past that plaque that's on there near the Wampanoag graves up at Great Bight, and they leave something. And now, of course, everybody wants to leave things. So there's a lot of things, a lot of rocks, leaves, flowers.
Now that's a memorable site for me because I feel as though we truly pioneered that site. This beautiful fall day, Elaine's sophomore class and a few of the community people, like Elsie Noons, came with coffee and donuts and snacks. And here we are with our shovels and rakes and things. And we had to clean this area up. And some of the kids wound up with poison ivy. But this was the old Marine cemetery, and it was badly overgrown. And we did the best we could, but it looks better now. And this was down where the old lobster hatchery was. And the other part of it that I'm proud of is we went all the way to the State House in Boston to appeal to them to take those empty water tanks down. And they finally did after the lobster hatchery had closed.
Yeah, that Rebecca is the granddaughter of the other Rebecca.
Mm-hmm.
And she had a tragic life. And like Carrie said, the old graveyard was just, it was derelict. And not only derelict, but because of the lobster hatchery, they dumped bathtubs there and all kinds of things. All kinds of things there. And we tried to get them to clean it up. And there was 2 huge big water tanks from an experiment that MIT had done 15 years before. So we ended up going to the State House and speaking to the person responsible for the environment. And we did get those removed. And we've cleaned it up a few times, but it's an ongoing project.
I'm glad that you're able to just rectify and make it such a beautiful site. That's something to be honored and cherished and really respected now, and not kind of left to be forgotten. It's so important that we don't just let things sit. Dr. Elaine, do you have a memorable site or piece of information that you found when you were researching and kind of creating this trail?
I do. So many of the sites for me, it's the stories that go with them. The site for Rebecca up at Great Bight in Chilmot, the original Rebecca, the woman from Africa, it gave me great satisfaction when President Obama was staying across the road from there. And I thought, I hope that Rebecca, wherever she is, knows that this man who had an African father and he has got the most important job in America. Also, it touches my heart to think it kind of, you can know about enslavement, you can know about the Middle Passage, you can know about those, but to actually have a name and a person, that makes it all real. So that one, the Powell House in the Highlands area, Isabel Washington Powell was a character and a half. And every time I pass that, she's passed now at the age of 99, but every time I walk past that plaque, I remember her making me laugh lots of times. And it's the biggest plaque on the trail. And if you'd had the pleasure of meeting her, you'd know why. So that's a favorite. They all come with stories and they attach to you for different reasons. I like Carrie's plaque on her house because it reminds me of all the work we've done together over many, many years, over 30 years, I think. And it sort of affirms for me when I walk past it. I think, yeah, that's a good thing.
Aside from my plaque, my favorite is the landladies, because these ladies had open guest houses. They kind of encircle Hiawatha Park, but the originals were Miss Izette and Mrs. O'Brien, and they opened a place for African Americans to live, to come live and work. And we have a plaque on their house, but then there were so many others that came after that we put a bench and a plaque in Hiawatha Park. But the thing that really amazes me about these women they were entrepreneurs in a time when the saying was women should be barefoot and pregnant. So these women were getting it done, so to speak.
And that is a very special story, and I agree. And that one is one that just this year, 3 more landladies' stories have been shared with us at the trail, and people want to really explore that. But I think that those women were truly entrepreneurs. They were revolutionaries.
Yes, far
Um,
beyond their time.
yeah, and two of them were featured in the Green Book. So they actively encouraged people to come. And how it was put to me, they said, well, we used to charge $9 a week, but if you only had 7, we'd take that. And there you have it. It's entrepreneurial, but it's also supporting your community and giving to your community.
And that was during a time when Black people couldn't go anywhere else on the island to,
Yes,
to
yes.
stay. Mhm.
They have that safety and that community is still there, and they were able to bring that to Island. I think that's so important that I'm something that we're able to recognize that and keep that as a site to be honored, because it really is. It's revolutionary. They will open their doors to that.
I think it's quite shocking, even though I've been doing this work for 30 years, it still kind of shocks me when we just had a request last week to include the Open Door Club, which was in Edgartown, but the building has been torn down. And the Open Door Club was a place where the housekeepers who worked, referred to in the 1970s as the help, could go and socialize on Thursdays and I think on Sunday afternoon, because they weren't welcome anywhere else. So when they weren't working, they were to go to that club. And to see it actually written in the newspapers quite casually sort of shook me, even though I know it.
Yeah.
It's like what you know, and then it's proven to you, and you think, how could people be doing that?
Yeah, it's just monstrous. I'm just so glad that we've upheld since then and really just been more aware of how absurd and tragic that history is, and just that segregation that was just unwanted.
But you know what? The other side of that is exactly what Carrie said a few minutes ago about the landladies. Because I started reading all this stuff about the Open Door Club, and people were sending me stuff. And so I got a chance to spend a few days last week reading it. And what I got out of it was there was this woman, Mrs. Smith, who herself had worked in domestic service in Edgartown. And she said she was inspired to do something for her own people. So her and her husband bought this house. It was a very modest house. It certainly been replaced by something a lot more grandiose. But they did it, and they organized it, and they had concerts, and they had dances, and here again, you've got this entrepreneurial spirit and this, well, if we can't get it, then this is what we'll do. And that is so admirable.
Yes.
And along that same line of firsts, I mean, there's been so many firsts, I feel like, on this island and in the country. And like Captain William Martin being the first whaling captain, as well as Quentin Bannister, first African American teacher at the high school.
And we have a plaque at the superintendent's office, the school superintendent's office, to Helen Vanderhoop Manning, who was the first teacher of color on Martha's Vineyard, Rufus Shorter, who was the first African American school superintendent. Later, there was another one, but he was the first. Robert Tankard, who was the first principal of color on Martha's Vineyard. What a firsts.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all so important. I think as children, when you grow up and you see people that look like you, or you can kind of build that connection, it helps to really build your own confidence and see, your aspirations really be able to come to life. And also when educators, when they can help relate more so to the children and really help propel them to just reach their goals and do what they want to do.
That's one of the reasons for the plaques, because they're still not in the books. So sometimes they happen to be walking along an area and see a plaque with the information. So
That's true. I mean, the Powell House is a really good example of that. You can pick up any US history textbook in use in public schools in America, and you will not find Adam Clayton Powell. But he was the leader of the Democratic majority during Kennedy and Johnson's administration, 112 civil rights amendments, and only people over a certain age have heard of him. He was a very larger than life character. And just last year, I took out a group, and there was a young girl, maybe 12, 13, and she knew everything about him. And I was so thrilled. And I said, "How do you know all this?" She said, "Oh, I go to Adam Clayton Powell Charter School."
oh,
Because I knew that he wasn't in the books.
yes.
And that's a shame. It's so important that, you know, not only are these people recognized, but they're told in the history in books that get taught at the schools and in curriculums. I think that these plaques could be a start to that and really help getting that recognition that these people deserve, rightfully so, for their accomplishments and just being just tremendous leaders in the community.
Absolutely.
Speaking of tremendous leaders in the
A lot
community,
of things are presented as if, I mean, enslavement is a classic example. If it's presented at all, it's presented as African American history. But I would suggest that it absolutely is not.
I think that also it's important to recognize those who are still with us and who've done amazing contributions, such as yourself, Miss Tankard, and Miss Jackie Hunt. And so you were able to dedicate sites and plaques to both of you as well as others. And I think that's tremendous. It's important that we uplift those who have done so much to help us get to where we are and help us see where we need to still go.
My husband shares this plaque with me because he was our first bus driver and our most enthusiastic bus driver. He would be so good on his tours. At one point, he said to us, "You don't have to pay me because I got so many tips."
Well,
And sometimes he would add his own stories into ours.
he was one of the most entertaining people you could ever meet. And when he sadly passed away long before his time, somebody who had taken the tour the year before wrote a column in the Boston Globe about the experience
Mhm.
and how he'd heard that George had passed, and he wanted to just talk about the tour he took with him. And I think both of these plaques here, both of these ladies, you know, they turn up. So much is of life, you know, work is kind of drudgery. We work hard on the trail. I work a lot of hours every week on it. These ladies turn up. They're at every meeting. They do what they can all the time. They can be counted on for that. And I think that's important to honor. Again, it's, you know, it's not, they're not going to be interviewed by Oprah.
No.
But if they were, she might learn something.
Certainly would. I think we all would. We all have so much to learn from our ancestors and those that are just keeping these stories alive, like yourselves. I appreciate that so much.
Miss Hunt is sitting there taking us to school at that moment that picture was taken. She was telling us something important.
Oh, yes. No doubt about that.
As we talk about history that's not told, there's also many people don't understand or even realize that there really were enslaved people here on this island of Martha's Vineyard, and that people with families and hopes and dreams, such as Esther. And I would love for Dr. Elaine, if you can please like kind of introduce Esther and explain her story and how she came to be. I know that on October 1st, 2020, her escape from Edgartown Harbor was officially included in the National Underground Railroad Network to Freedom. And it was now the first site to get this designation on the island of Martha's Vineyard. So I'd love some insight into her life and how that came to be.
As much as we can know about her life, I researched the story of Esther about 15 years ago, originally. And that was in the days where you actually went to the Vineyard Gazette and you went through big boxes of envelopes that they had newspaper cuttings in. And I found this story that had been published in the Gazette in 1850, was talking about a fugitive escape that had occurred off island, and said, oh, we had that here in 1743. And so I really began to look into that and found that a deposition had been taken from the two sailors whose job, I guess they were bounty hunters, but they were returning Esther to enslavement in South Carolina. And they put in Edgartown Harbor, and they said that they tied her down in their boat with ropes. They put a crowbar over her and chained her. But when they got up in the morning, she had left in one of the rowboats attached to their boat. There's two ways you can look at that. Were they complicit in her leaving? Had they really not done all these things? But there's arguments against that too, because it was their job to return her, and there was a legal inquiry into how they had let her go, and that's why they'd had to give a deposition. So it would have been a very big step to take. However, if somebody is chained down and tied with ropes and has a crowbar placed over them, I think it's quite difficult for them to get up. So somebody helped her. Did people, the Underground Railroad that existed? Edgartown Harbor is very near to Chappaquiddick, which was a Native American plantation reservation at that time. It would have been the obvious place for her to escape to. She would blend in more. She would be more likely to find sympathetic people. So that's my guess, that she went to Chappaquiddick and that's what happened. To get it included on the Underground Railroad is a real process. It's an incredible process. You have to use maps to show where, you have to show the research, you have to submit all the articles, you have to get the town to agree to the application. None of that was the town was very supportive in Edgartown. They were very excited about. So I had a 5-minute meeting with them saying, I've researched this and I want to make this application. Filling out the forms was a chore, a lengthy one. And you have to make sure that you're absolutely right. You know, you can't be even a little bit wrong. So it was very, very gratifying when they included her. And we have great hopes that another rescue that occurred in Aquinnah, for which I've submitted all the paperwork and got everybody to support it, the town, the tribe. We have great hopes that that will be the next one recognized. I think it's very important to look at the Underground Railroad, because the stereotype of it would be benevolently inclined white people who didn't like slavery, and they existed and they're part of it, but the participation of people of color and Native people is enormously important. So for that reason, I've pursued it for both of these. And it's also putting Esther's now on the National Register for the Network to Freedom. So that's a government Parks Department So it was a big deal, and we're thrilled. We're going to dedicate a site to her at Memorial Wharf, hopefully on the 27th of July, which was the date she escaped.
Forward to that. I'm so appreciative of all the hard work you put into telling her story and making sure that she is remembered. And it's just so inspiring that he was able to, hear this name. A lot of the enslaved people, we don't know their story. We don't know their names.
Yeah.
We lost that and so much more. And it's good that we can reminisce on those that we do know, but it's also equally important that we honor those that we don't know, because they deserve the equal recognition as well for all of the hardships and horrendous things that they endured. And so with that, you have been working with the charter school students to honor those people that have lost everything, and creating this nameless trail that is soon to be site number 32. How was that project, and how is this really?
Well, everything is ready for a dedication. We have a date of May 12th when the school and the trail that the kids created will be dedicated as site number 32. And we have the plaque and all of that. It was inspiring to work with kids and to take something as complicated, complex, and laden that adults have a hard time with it, and work with kids in 5th and 6th grade, which is who the kids were in the charter school. It was totally interesting. They grasped it. What we did was take the people that we know existed on Martha's Vineyard, enslaved on Martha's Vineyard, but we don't know their names, their real names. We know the names they were known by. And so that's why it's called the Nameless Trail. The kids chose a name from the names we knew, and they did a rock. And you can see on the picture there, Peter, age 10, sold in Vineyard Haven. And that for me was a gratifying moment when the student very, very carefully painted that. And I said, "You chose to do Peter?" And he said, "Yeah, he was only 10. And so I can kind of imagine what being 10 is like. And I said, "Yeah, imagine how he felt. He must have been really scared." And he said, "Yeah, but imagine how his family felt. Look what they lost." And I thought, yes, it works.
You got it.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, that was a great minute. So working with them, the charter school were really committed. They really wanted to do this. And as you can see, the photograph there, the child was working very carefully and looking at everything. They were very, very careful about how they did it, what they wanted to do. So all of those rocks are going to be made into a little trail at the charter school called the Nameless Trail. And our plaque will be on a rock there saying that we honor the Nameless Trail. And we'll have had a whole group of students, in fact, a whole school, I guess, of students once they're all back, who will be aware of the realities of, that we use the word so glibly, but it's not glib. You lose your name, you lose your religion, you lose your family. That's huge.
And I think it's also really important to recognize that, the people that were enslaved, they weren't just adults. They weren't just men and women. They were children, like Peter.
Yes, like Peter. There's a bill of sale that for Peter, and that's another one of those things that sometimes you look at some of these old documents, and I love research and I've got the patience for it, and I'll be doing this, and then you read a document, a bill of sale where one gentleman sold Peter to another gentleman. And because it's a legal document, it says, "Having in myself a good and legal right to complete this sale." And you think, that was the law. In his mind, he had a perfect right to do that.
It's unimaginable just how humanely people were treated just for looking different, coming from a different place, daring to just be themselves. And like you say, everything was just snatched from them, from their way of life to their identity. And it's so beautiful that they will be honored and remembered from time to come.
I can't.
This one definitely touched my heart. I felt like on both of these, some of like Peter was sold, I think, in the 1780s or 1770s. Esther, 1743. I felt like they'd waited a long time to get a mention.
Janelle, could you turn your volume up?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll speak louder. And I think that with this, not only empowering these children to learn about these stories and to take part in creating this trail, really teaching them the history that comes along with all of this that needs to be remembered is so important. And I think building into a curriculum would be so helpful to really be able to move forward and have the next generation really help shape our future, because you can't know and help change the future without knowing the past first. And I think you've inspired these young children and boys and girls and to really just take flight and take all this knowledge and really make it into something beautiful.
Unfortunately, Janelle, you're speaking to the choir. We know that. Doesn't seem the school system knows that.
I think, yeah, I'd have to agree with that. Every little step, I suppose, is an achievement. And I was talking before about listening and patience and how those are important. Sometimes it's difficult to be really patient with people who still don't see it. But what did they say? There's none so blind as those who won't see. There's 200 years of prevarication that goes into that. I mean, if people say, oh, there wasn't any slavery here, was there? Well, yes, of course there was. But then once you acknowledge that, you can also talk about the people who helped fugitives from enslavement, who were helped through Martha's Vineyard. And then you see that it's a human story, not the way that history traditionally gets taught as a sort of triumphalist narrative that doesn't actually, I wonder how much of it is true.
It's sad that, I think that with moving forward and kind of the hopes for what we can change with the curriculum and really open the eyes of those that maybe don't understand or won't admit it yet, really that comes down to the first step. Before we can change anything, we have to admit what happened. We have to acknowledge the atrocities that took place to people, to land, to that affected generations to come and still affect us today.
Right.
Forward.
And that's the key, I guess. I know, I don't guess. The key is that you acknowledge what happened. What we get is, because there's been such a division in the United States between Black and white people. So people have said to me a few times, well, it wasn't about me. I never had slaves. Well, I didn't think you did. And it's not about playing a game of pointing out people who had slaves. Because if I wanted to do that, I can say, well, look at the founding fathers. I don't have to go any further. But I think that defensiveness and that fear gets in the way.
I agree. I think once you get past that white fragility, we can get towards the decolonization of education to really better us as a society and to be able to really just blossom and do great things together and unified, but we have to get to that first step first.
Yes.
And it's just so important that we do that.
Yes.
I agree.
That was what the charter school have been doing, and that was very cool. I mean, it wasn't only the project they did with me, but they were also making curricular changes. I know Freedom Cartwright is going in to talk about the civil rights movement in the South, and they were really making a very concerted effort, which made it fun to work with them. I would like to see it become more general.
I agree. I love that they took that first step. And I hope that the other schools locally on this island, public and private, as well as on a larger sense within the state and the country as a whole, take that initiative as well and really learn from this and just tell the truth and be
Yes.
transparent.
Because then you can actually see everything in the context of everything else. So if you're going to just say, oh yeah, Dr. Martin Luther King, Harriet Tubman, now we're done. No, we're not done. There's a lot more. In the last 2019, we took out 4 big school groups from off island, one from Providence, Rhode Island, who were just delightful, one from Brooklyn, New York, one from Georgia, and one from Boston. And that was something that was very encouraging, that the schools really wanted to bring their kids and really wanted to do this. So
Phenomenal that you're able to get from different corners of this country to already start that. I mean, they're already doing that groundwork, that grassroots of exposing kids to the truth and the history that
we have to travel, hopefully. We have to carry on, just carry on. We can't stop, and be hopeful and be good, really committed ourselves, but be aware that people meet people where they're at, and that is a really big part of it. And everybody's entitled to respect. And I think without respect, you don't get anywhere with anybody. So everybody's entitled to be treated respectfully, and we hope to bring them on. Right, Miss Carrie?
Exactly.
Couldn't agree more, honestly.
It's been a labor of love.
Yeah. It seems like it has been. You have poured your heart and soul into this. And I'm so thankful that you have and continue to do the work you do.
I'm just sorry. I'm getting too old now. I don't do a lot of the tours anymore like I used to. But when they come by, if I'm not in the middle of something, I come out and try to greet people, and they're grateful. So I do that.
People love that. They really like it if Miss Carrie comes out, because, again, here's a real human being standing there who has a plaque in a yard and who's going to tell you the story, or just is going to interact with you. That's pretty powerful. Miss Carrie does that, and Miss Jocelyn Walton does that. Sometimes the Overton House, dedicated to Dr. Martin Luther King, they do it. It's really important. And people say when they meet Carrie, I met her. Yeah.
Like the children from one of those schools you mentioned was on a scavenger hunt. And they had to find different sites, and they came by my site, and they were able to get a picture of me. So they said, we're winning. We're going to win this thing.
Oh, yeah. That would definitely put them ahead.
Yeah.
So we all here are women, and this is Women's History Month. And I think I would love to kind of leave on a positive note and really have a message. If, we as women go through things every day, all through our lives, obstacles that we've overcome and barriers and things that we just shatter. So if there are, young women or young girls or older women watching or listening in, if you could leave them with a particular message of advice, what would that be?
Well, know who you are, do what you do, and keep moving. Don't let anybody get in your way.
Well, I would agree with those. And I think, I don't think we're dealing with a level playing field right now for women or for girls. Um, a woman makes a noise is a loudmouth, a man who makes a noise is a natural leader. We still have all of that. But I would say to girls, listen, you have a chance to achieve your goals, even though it may be harder, even though you're going to get patronized on occasion, you're going to be not received well for being determined, but be determined. Be who you are, stand up for who you are. And if you're proud of who you are, the thing that's great about that is that you can be proud of who everybody else is too. You can give respect and value because you're not worrying all the time, what will the boys be thinking about me? Which is a huge part of women's lives, particularly girls, adolescent girls. And I would love to be able to say, don't worry about that. Anybody who's worth your attention will like you for who you are. You go for your goals. Think of those landladies, women that Carrie mentioned earlier, who revolutionized Mother's Vineyard. All the people that stayed in their hotels, they were working in Edgartown as servants, but they couldn't stay in Edgartown. So these women saw that opportunity, but also gave that support and stood their ground. Isabel Washington Powell, that we've got Emma Maitland, the world lightweight female boxing champion. We've got a lot of strong women, not to mention Miss Carrie and myself. We've got a message. You can do it. If they can, you can.
And it's definitely a battle, but we got to keep pushing. We have so much more to accomplish and to just aim to be more equitable for all of us.
Yes. There's much to be done, but there's no reason why we can't do it.
Exactly. Thank you for this discussion. This has been just tremendous. We're going to take some time to answer any questions from the community members and attendees here, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's asked, will there be tours of the African American Heritage Trail this season?
Yes, we're beginning walking tours now. The plan is, unless there's a huge fourth surge or third surge, whichever surge we're up to, the plan is for the driven tours with the vans to start on July 1st. The walking tours are customized right now. So if you want one, you contact us and ask us, but we will offer the walking tours a few days a week from April 1st.
I will definitely be taking the tour sometime soon then.
I hope so. It would be wonderful to see you on there.
Somebody else asked where they can obtain a list of the current markers in their locations.
Could you repeat that question?
They asked where they could find a list of all of the current markers of the African American Heritage Trail of Martha's Vineyard.
On our website. There's a complete list on the website of all 31 sites. Our website is mvafricanamericanheritagetrail.org.
And somebody else would like to know about that dedication to the Nameless Trail, when that will be public. If you can reiterate that date, please.
May 12th at 1 o'clock.
We'll be there. Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking this time to join us today to celebrate Women's History Month and the accomplishments of yourselves, wonderful women, as well as this African American Heritage Trail. It's so needed, so welcomed, and just a tremendous addition to this island. I mean, you are remarkable women. And by bringing our history to life, you yourselves have become women making history. You've brought this wonderful opportunity here for us to know and learn and just inspire even more growth. So I thank you for that and all that you continue to do.
Thank you.
Yes, Janelle.
If anyone would like to send any contributions to the African American Heritage Trail of Martha's Vineyard, we welcome you to do so via P.O. Box 596, West Tisbury, Massachusetts, 02575. Your gift will be tax deductible and your name will be placed on a monument of remembrance. To learn more about the African American Heritage Trail of Martha's Vineyard, you can visit their website at mvafricanamericanheritagetrail.org or their social media. To access this recording of today's event or to connect with the NAACP Martha's Vineyard branch, you can visit our website, marthasvineyardnaacp.org, or at NAACPMV on all social media platforms. To learn more information about or request language services from the Communication Ambassador Partnership of Martha's Vineyard, they can be reached at communicatecapmv@gmail.com or on Facebook at communicatecapmv. All these resources will be made available later, as well as in the chat below. As Janet Mock once said, telling our stories first to ourselves and then to one another in the world is a revolutionary act. It's an act that can be met with hostility, exclusion, and violence. It can also lead to love, understanding, transcendence, and community. We hope that this Women Making History program has been an enlightening experience and it leaves you with a better understanding and appreciation for history. Happy Women's History Month. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Janelle.
Thank you, Janelle.
Have a wonderful day, ladies. Thank you.
You too.
And thank you, Zora and Sasha, for your wonderful help today.